Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA Podcast. I'm your host, André Natera. On today's episode, we have legendary chef John Tesar. He's a chef, restaurateur, legend in the game. He's earned a Michelin star. He used to be Anthony Bourdain's chef. He's a friend of mine, and he's just overall a really interesting, cool guy. I think you'll enjoy this conversation. We talk about being Anthony Bourdain's chef, Michelin, running a successful restaurant, the highs and lows of the kitchen, and some great chef advice as well. You really want to listen to this one. It's a fun one. Stay tuned. We're live, Chef. It's good seeing you.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, it's been too long. I'm trying to think when the last time I saw you. I mean, I saw you at Hot Luck.
Yeah, last year at Hot Luck.
I saw you at Hot Luck, but I'm trying to think when. I think it was at Knife years ago. I went to go have. I had lunch, and that was probably the last time I saw you. Like, sat down, and had a conversation with you.
I think I saw you once before you left the Fairmont, or
Yeah.
as you were leaving town.
Yeah.
To come down here.
Yeah. How you been, man?
No, life's good. No complaints. Life's always going to be what it is. I've just kind of learned to kick back and be myself and not sweat the small stuff. Focus. I've been very blessed to get all these deals, licensing deals with major hotel groups, Ritz-Carlton, Marriott, worldwide. It's a privilege, but there's a challenge to everything. Like when you license your name or your brand or whatever it is that you created or that people seek you for, it's double-edged sword. You have to give up a little control. You have to.
You gonna have the breakfast buffet?
No buffets. We have that in the contract. It's all good. See,
Yeah.
It's all about negotiations in business, truly.
Yeah.
And you learn about that. But then when you get to operational, you have to let go because you have to let the thing I like about the most is I let younger people show me who they are and how good they are or what they're capable of or what their direction they're going in. And I apply it to like where I'm at. It helps rejuvenate me. I'm always looking for education or someone to show me something new because I know that I don't know everything, especially about cooking. I've always been a very simplistic, ingredient-driven, very simple-minded. Like Marco Pierre White says, it's not like a creative period. It's just like it's reconstruction. Mm-hmm. It's working things out until you like them or somebody else likes them. And I think as you mature as a chef, you realize it's not about you. It's about the customer. Mm-hmm. And it's called the hospitality business, not the ego, hey, look at me business. But that also is a delicate balance because you have to do something interesting enough, be good enough, stick with it long enough, have your peers respect you to actually be something in this business other than a paycheck and another guy in a chef coat. I mean, I think that's kind of a dying art to me in a sense of tradition. I do believe everything's based in the classics, whether you want to believe it or not. And I see in this society right now, we have a general tendency to erase history, to kind of create a future for ourselves, which I don't think is the way to go about that. I just think that you need to base it off history. You can create your foundation and then you can go wild.
Yeah.
But if you don't pay your dues to the generation before you, you're just a selfish prick, in my mind. And, I've been a selfish prick at times when I was younger, and an asshole, rage in the kitchen. And, the story is about throwing things and drinking. I've never been that guy, you know what I mean? I've thrown things in the kitchen, but not like, I've seen some chefs. Like I met, I can say his name, Jean-Louis Paladin, famous man. I walked into the Rio in Las Vegas. This was years ago, decades ago. I was just a young man coming to Vegas, and I was being introduced by this guy, Omar, who ran the foundation room and was the food and beverage director of the Rio at the time. And he was showing me Jean-Louis' restaurant. And as I walked into the restaurant, I literally saw a Dover pan fly from one side to the kitchen, hit the wall, slide down, and I heard a lot of profanity in French.
Right.
And I was like, it's a restaurant.
Right. Yeah, times have changed, right? So one of the things that I like to say is if you were tasked with digging a 10-foot hole and someone else dug 9 feet and you only dug the last foot, you can't say you dug all 10 feet. Someone dug 9 feet before you took over.
Most definitely.
And no one wants to give that credit.
I give everybody before me, after me, working with me credit. I just don't think, if you can't get to that point in your career where you realize because of HR, because of growth, because of multiple locations, because of television and popularity and, all these other things, you have to give other people credit. Otherwise, you are the biggest douchebag on the planet. And I've never been that guy, never want to be that guy. And you need to cultivate. This is what's missing from the world, I think, of kitchens. And you see it with Danielle. You see it with Jean-Georges. They cultivate people. They mentor people. Mm-hmm. You yourself you're a real chef. You know this. You have to work with people. You have to appreciate them. You have to absorb from them like a sponge. And you can't do it from YouTube and a cookbook. No, you just can't do it. I'm sorry. I'm not poo-pooing that. There's listen, I go to YouTube all the time when I run out of ideas, like see who's doing something. But I'm not often fascinated by what I'm seeing because I don't need to transform something into a foam or a shape or, it's just not who I am. If you like that and you're a master of it, God bless you. But where are those restaurants today?
Yeah, the bubble food's gone. The bubble food era is dead. Well, I mean, World's 50 Best just came out, right? So there was a couple of Spanish restaurants that kind of crept into the top 10. So I was thinking, man, maybe bubble food's back. Maybe I was wrong.
No, I love those guys. I read a review of Mugaritz the other day that was just unbelievable.
A video? Was it a video?
Oh yeah, it was some guy just dissing the place.
Yeah,
and I've been there and I've had magical experiences. But this is what's wrong with popularity and television and fads and sound bites and social media. Is that people get a taste of something and then they think they know everything about it or they understand it. This is a destination place, and you have to do a little research before you go to a restaurant like Mugaritz. You have to know that it's in the Pyrenees Mountains. You have to know that Andoni worked at El Bulli, and he's going to do his own interpretations, and you look over the hill and you see the water. That's where the seafood comes from. The cheese comes from the goat over there. All of this is really zero kilometra, like on the property, regional stuff. And then with this Spanish mind that these guys sit down at tables and figure out what they can put into things, take out of things. They work for months on these things. El Bulli was closed. For 6 months, they worked on development.
Yeah.
If I had a team of 30 guys and 6 months, I'd have 3 Michelin stars right here in Texas.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much money I'd make or who's coming, but it would be a Michelin starred restaurant for sure.
How much? So when did you start cooking? What would be your era as a come up as a cook?
Oh, I would say the 80s for sure. I started late 70s, washing dishes in 76, grilling burgers in 77 and 78, making salads in 79, and then chef de cuisine, blah, 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 80,
Right.
And that was like a stretch, chef de cuisine, because I was making a lot of mistakes until this French guy, Willie, showed up and taught me how to make sauces and really be a French chef. And then I went off to Europe because I figured that was the move to make. It was not only about money, but it was about tradition and also true understanding of, I wanted to be that, André Saltner.
Right.
I wanted to be, Rachou at La Côte Basque. That was this, it wasn't even about Michael McCarty and Jonathan Waxman. They were puppies working in these restaurants.
Yeah.
Rick Moonen used to put the bones in the oven at La Côte Basque while, Truman Capote and Jackie O are in the dining room. So, we go way, way back.
Right. So when you think about your career, because you've had quite the career, quite the legacy. You've worked with the who's who. You've done. You have what people's buckets list. You've done it, right?
I've done a lot of things.
You've done a lot of really great things as a chef. And so when you look at your career, when you talk about food, is there a period in time that is like, if you could go back to it, that is the period of time that you say, this is the food that I could cook for the rest of my life that I enjoy eating and I enjoyed cooking?
Yeah, I would say, if there was a time period too and a place, it would be New York City, late 80s, early 90s, around the time where Larry Forgione did American Place, and he was hanging out with James Beard while he was still alive, and Paul Prudhomme. I literally witnessed these. I had privy to these experiences walking into American Place and talking to James Beard, Paul Prudhomme, and Larry Forgione at the same time. Because Larry was consulting on a restaurant, Jack's 1022 Lexington Avenue, that I was hired to be the chef after I got back from France. Still not ready for that position in New York, but Larry Forgione, Larry Elbert, who later was the chef at the Sonoma Mission Inn, and they all came from the River Cafe in Brooklyn, famous thing with Buzzy O'Keefe in New York. I'm going way, way back now.
Yeah.
So I've had these moments. And then, Jonathan Waxman created Jams. Legendary. Talk about bringing California, bringing simplicity, bringing precise, but modern, healthy cooking to New York, and wrapping it around the most beautiful people and the lifestyle and the Upper East Side and the disco era, and lots of white powder and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah. Who was I'm trying to think. You mentioned the Sonoma Michelin. Bruno Tisson was the chef there. He was the chef at the Plaza in New York back in probably when Trump was running the Plaza back then. Who else was the chef? Carrie Simon, I think.
Carrie
was the chef at the restaurant inside the Plaza.
Yeah, the Palm Court.
Yeah, the Palm. I mean, these are the good old days. So, what a lot of people may know, I know this. Maybe a lot of people that are listening don't know, but you and Anthony Bourdain crossed paths. I was just reading the book a couple months ago, and so your character in there is Jimmy Sears, right?
Jimmy Sears.
But
yes.
at the end, he also references you when he's starting to list off a legacy of great chefs in New York at the time, and he calls you out by name.
He puts me in the book in several places. One with a pseudonym, and then some compliments backhanded compliments in the back under a real name, and then in medium raw, he has a little. I guess it's not a full chapter, but it's like I forget what it's called, my chef or whatever, and he outs me as because for years people wouldn't believe I was Jimmy Sears.
Yeah.
And that's a tribute to Tony's fame.
Yeah.
It's like when you say I knew Frank Sinatra, people are like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, sure you did.
Yeah, sure he did. That's the whole thing. But people don't realize that, it's a weird thing. He was so famous, people think that I work for him.
Right.
But he worked for me, and we met at Formerly Joe's, Bigfoot, Andy Menschel. I was down on my luck, blah, blah, blah. And then we all went off to the supper club where I hired Adam, last name unknown, Steve Temple, God rest his soul. He died in a car accident, I think, 2 years ago. Terrible. And we put that crew together, and Tony, as I was putting my life back together, Tony was becoming a real chef.
Yeah.
He had gone to Vassar. He had gone to the Culinary Institute of America. He had worked in the 70s, down at the South Street Seaport and these pirate kitchens where you see him with the knives and the bandanas. That was the state of American cooking back then. There was nothing fancy about it at all. It was it wasn't a glamorous job, folks. There was There was no Bobby Flay, no Guy Fieri. No one had a camera.
There was no Food Network, none of that.
No
existed,
podcast.
Right? Yeah, no podcast, none of that.
We were just trying to get a job. I was trying to make some money and stay alive, and I love to cook. So that's the beauty of the era that I come from. But Bourdain comes from that same thing, so we had a lot in common, and we loved life. And believe it or not, we loved to go skiing together, of all things. So we'd go to Hunter Mountain, or sometimes I'd take him to Killington.
Yeah.
And Tony never turned. It's just a little known fact. Maybe Eric Ripert knows this, but when I knew him, Tony couldn't turn. So he was always the fastest guy down the hill.
Yeah.
Because once he went, he never stopped. And I'm glad we took him to only upstate New York and smaller hills in Vermont, because I think we probably would have killed him if we took him someplace else.
Yeah.
Because he never turned to skis. He always would go as fast as he could. And
so back in the day, you were his boss and he worked for you. You were training him.
I was the chef. Andy had gone to Gotham Bar and Grill. He wanted the chef to turn around Formerly Joe's. It's in the book. And he goes, well, Christmas season is coming up. And this guy, Flacco, Tony, he's down in the St. Martin with his wife, Nancy, his first wife, Nancy, whose father was a prominent surgeon. So, she propped it up, the relationship, a little bit. And he was down there writing Bone in the Throat, all those mafia novels that he wrote prior to writing Kitchen Confidentials. So he was an unpublished author at the time, but writing constantly and very intellectual, very interesting. You can tell by the voiceover of his show, he's a great conversationalist, very charming in some strange, unique way. And we just hit it off.
Yeah.
So I would cook for him, and then we would talk about life afterwards. And we'd smoke weed, we'd go out, and oddly enough, in this bar that I worked in the Hamptons, Magic's Pub, I made Bloody Mary mix, tuna fish sandwiches. I learned how to grill hamburgers there. I was a bar boy at night. But on Sundays, every once in a while, Jimmy Breslin, Pete Hamill, George Plimpton, and a few other writers would come in. They were all out there on their summer vacations. They were, I don't know, they played golf or they wanted to talk or they were writing. Let's meet, And they would sit at this 6-stool bar in West Hampton Beach. And I'm shaking the Bloody Mary mix, listening to these guys talk about life.
Yeah.
So I got to know them after a few summers, right? So when Tony and I were down in the Village, Dennis, our friend, worked at Formerly Joe's, but he was also a bartender at the Red Lion. So I got to...
Forgot about that hotel.
the Red Lion, Dennis, these writers, they all worked for the New York Post and the Daily News. And after they did their byline, they would go drink at the Red Lion. And Dennis was our key to the Red Lion. We went there, sat at the bar, and I got to introduce those guys to Bourdain way before he was famous. And these are some of the best like newspaper journalists in New York City. You know, Jimmy Breslin wrote about Son of Sam. Pete Hamill was actually dating Jackie O at the time. You know what I mean? So, and he had a column in the Daily News, I believe. And then Jimmy Breslin wrote for Page Six, not Page Six, but he had a column for, I think, in every paper in New York City at one time. But at the time, I think it was the New York Post. And George Plimpton, famous writer, filmmaker, was doing Paper Lion. You know, he was a writer that actually wrote and then involved himself in the situations. Very famous writer in the 70s and the 80s, a Hampton socialite too. So like, it was fascinating for me to introduce those guys to Bourdain when he wanted to be such a famous writer.
Yeah.
So I'd hang out and these guys would all talk about this, and I was just like a chef, you know, having I don't know what I was drinking back then, but it was something. I was just fascinated by the energy I was able to create by introducing all these people. Yeah. And that's what you get from the restaurant business, and that's how Tony and I hit it off, really.
It's funny. Every now and again, I think about my career. I think about your career because there's times that our careers have crossed paths. Yeah. I think back, I don't know, when you opened up the commissary in Dallas, and I remember we did an event and we sat there and we had drinks after this event that I did, and it was you and Matt McAllister and I think Stephen Doyle was there, and there was a lot of chefs, but the only one who had a name at the time was you. And I just remember looking around like, man, one day people are going to look back on this and be like, all these fucking people were in the same room at the same time. But you've probably had that many times in your career. Like,
oh, I love those. Those are the moments I live for. You know, and you know Brent, who works for me, Brent Weathers. I take him around the country, right, to all these events. And Brent's like 6'4", has big Rasta hair. Everybody knows him by now. And the fact that I can take Brent anywhere in the world, and like Danielle's high-fiving him, you know, you name it, Curtis Stone's hugging him. Everywhere you go, everybody knows Brent. Yeah. Because this is what our business or those situations create. You know, is that we've been able to go to these festivals and work our way up from the bottom to the top and cook next to some of the greatest chefs in the world and hang with them. You know, have the crowd like our food. That's how a lot of this came about, was like hanging myself out there. You know, people realize I had a name, but I started in the Hamptons on my own. I owned my first restaurant when I was 24. I went broke at 32 in New York trying to get a restaurant open and owning a building. And that's when I met Tony, to the Supper Club. I worked for Mariah Carey, tried to rebuild my life, worked the Inaquag. That summer, that's when I had 13 Barrow Street, which was a huge hit in the 90s. One night, I'll never forget this, at 13 Barrow Street, Gail Green, the food critic for New York Magazine, had written a stellar review about our restaurant. It was like, I was crying, I literally cried. I've only cried a few times about reviews or reviewers in my life. And this was one of those moments because it was like a childhood moment I lived. It was like Gail Green was giving me a review. Yeah. Like I used to like look at my mother's magazine when I was 12, 13 and read about every, you know, famous chefs or the new trendy thing that was going on. And for me, I was like, wow, one day, like you said, one day, you know? And I believe that's something that chefs and cooks, they lose because they want to do it now instead of the one day. You know, once you start doing things for money or for attention, you lose the path because it's not one day. It's a long period of time. It's a lot of ups and downs, no matter who you are. The good guys just make it look good, you know? Or they have enough money to sweat it and bury it. You know what I mean? Everybody fails. You can't have success without failure. But see, those moments and feeling that empowerment by being around those people, putting yourself out there, spending the time to watch, not wanting the attention, earning the reputation through your food and your personality to some extent. Excuse me. And by personality, I mean by like what your restaurant resonates as. Like one of the greatest moments in my life was that when Esquire magazine named us one of the most influential restaurants of the decade, because I had the guts to take the steakhouse on head first, you know? 10 years later, and I don't think anybody cares anymore, you know? They want the next trendy thing, they want the new, and far be it from me, I've gotten all the attention I've ever needed in my entire life. I have 5 restaurants. Hopefully we're gonna have a hotel right down the block here in the next 2 years. and have other things on the table. I just opened a restaurant. And there's a lot of work that goes with maintaining those. You know, people don't realize, oh, great, you have 5 restaurants. Yeah, I have to go around, and I give up a lot of control of those operations, you know, to be in a Ritz-Carlton, to get my place, to get myself in a situation where I can earn a Michelin star.
So for people that don't know, where are your restaurants right now?
We have the Original Knife in the Highland Hotel across from SMU off of 75 in Mockingbird, which after the first of the year, we're renovating the entire hotel, and I'm going to reconcept that after 11 years and name it Knife Steak and Seafood, which is a more approachable version of what we're doing in Orlando, which was our Michelin-starred restaurant in a Ritz-Carlton, which has a Michelin key. We had a Michelin star. We lost it last year. We are on the path to getting it back. This is something I like talking about, is like, you know, like I hope Texas is ready for Michelin, because we're used to softballs here, you know? And I can't tell you or predict. I think it's one of the most ridiculous things I've seen during this whole period, that every food writer and every blogger in the world decided to make who they decided was going to get a Michelin star.
By the way, I think there's 0 2s and possibly 0 3s. Maybe 1 2, but I doubt it. 0 3s.
When it comes to Michelin, I don't second guess them. When it comes to restaurants, I focus on my own. Yeah. That's something I've had to learn in the last few years, is like, you know, God bless anybody who gets it. You'll understand what it means, truly. You know, I've had it, and what it means is that you're a great destination for people who follow Michelin.
Did you see a significant increase in business when you got it?
We did in Florida, but you know, that also, another thing is Michelin is a destination tourism kind of thing. So, you know, Austin is a real tourist destination. Dallas is a business destination. Fort Worth is a business destination. So these things play into those things. You know, Houston, San Antonio. I think Michelin will be great for business people and for foodies, but I think Texans are going to have a hard time truly understanding what it is unless they're really involved in the food scene. Or they're world travelers, which there are a lot.
Yeah. Going back, so you also just opened up one in the Ritz-Carlton,
Las Colinas,
right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And then you have another one in California, right?
No, I sold the restaurant in California. I had an issue with the union. They attacked my children, and I got put on a video, and then they tried to cancel me on Page 6 and TMZ, and I was like, what am I doing on any of those things? So I said, wow, that was a moment where I was like,
if they try to cancel you, you're winning, right?
Am I actually notable that someone wants to cancel me?
You're winning, right?
So I made nice. The union apologized to me. I apologized to them, and they went away. But they're very powerful, and they're very nice people. You know, I don't begrudge anybody their success or anybody whatever they need to survive, to live in this world. That's not what I do. I cook, and I design restaurants, and I try to mentor people. The rest of it, I don't really pretend to know anything about, because I don't.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned earlier, you talked about how everyone fails, and I'll share something with the audience. When I was in Dallas and the restaurant got a bad review, and my life was just going in a downward spiral. What's interesting, when you're on top, you know this. When you're on top, everyone wants to be around you. They want some of your shine. Friends pop out of nowhere. Everyone loves you. But when you're on bottom, it's like you got the itis. No one wants to see you. No one wants to be your friend. Everyone blocks your calls. It's completely different.
When you're ready, I'll tell you a good story about being on the bottom.
And when I got my bad review, things are going south in all areas of my life. And I'll never forget, got a phone call from you and Mike Killer, and like, hey, we're coming to have a drink. And I was like, all right. So I got this bad review. You were the only 2 that showed up. You said, let's go upstairs, let's have a drink. And you gave me the talk that I needed to hear at that time. You might not remember, but I'll never forget it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you said, I'm paraphrasing, but you said, look, tonight, cry into your beer. You failed. Who cares? I failed a lot. You'll fail again. Get back after it. Tonight, have your pity party. Tomorrow, get back after it. And for that, I am forever thankful.
Well, you're welcome. You know, I'd say that to anybody, because I've been there myself. Chefs, restaurateurs, you know, we're the ones that spend millions of dollars,
right,
or hundreds of thousands of dollars, have employees, liability insurance, you know, taxes, rents, cam charges, all this stuff. And then someone comes and they have a dinner or two and they tell you all about your restaurant.
Yeah.
Great. But we now live in a world where everyone can kind of do that, right? That happens all the time in this business, and you can't fall for it. It's just like James Beard. You want a James Beard Award? Win it. Go earn it. It's yours. God bless you. I think the body of your work, the respect of your peers, and how many asses are in the seats in your restaurants every night, and are you paying your bills? That's the award that I want to fucking win at the end of the day.
That's what we were talking about the other day. Is like, I was at dinner, a group of chefs, like, what award is most important? Do you ever like Food and Wine, James Beard, whatever? And someone just
where are they now?
Yeah, no, but then at the
who won Best Chef 2005?
Exactly. And so someone just finally said the best award is a full restaurant that's making money. Like, that's
golf clap for that gentleman.
Right? So going back to
it's the only success that counts.
Yeah, right. I hate to say it's money in the bank, fucking asses in the seats. But when I look back at the moment when I think it was the tweet, right? You sent Leslie a tweet.
Yeah, I sent a tweet. FU tweet.
Yeah. It was. I mean, a lot of people have opinions on it. In retrospect, I look at that, might have been the most brilliant thing ever. I mean, they made a movie about it. Didn't give you credit.
Favreau did give me credit. I was down here. You want to talk about a great moment? I'll tell you those two moments real quickly. I came to the first Hot Luck.
Yeah.
And I knew Roy Choi for a long time. I met him in Lake Tahoe before he had a tattoo, before he was cool running the streets of L.A. He was up in Lake Tahoe with me hiding after 9/11, trying to figure out our lives. And he invited me for Thanksgiving because we had done this photo shoot. So I know Roy all this time, and I had no idea he was the consultant on Chef, and I knew, I had done that, and then that had happened. And I walked into Franklin's Barbecue, of all places in the world. And I walk in, and Favreau's slicing brisket. Picture this.
This is for the show that he has.
Yeah. Favreau is now slicing brisket with Aaron Franklin at Hot Luck as a guest, right? Yeah. And I walk in, and he looks up, and he's waving like this. And I'm like, who the fuck's Favreau? And he's like, no, you. Come over here. And he gives me a hug, and he acknowledged the whole FU tweet and the whole chef thing, and it was like a great moment, it was in there already, but we simultaneously had the same feeling, and I too feel the same way about chocolate lava cake at this point. So,
well, what do you mean chocolate? So was Jean-Georges underbake the cake, or the chocolate coulant that was in France for years before that? Like, what's the story?
This is a whole other thing, and I was actually there when JoJo's was JoJo's, before Jean-Georges had the empire. And I did this thing at the Supper Club with Bourdain. Oh my God. It was Alex Strada, Patrick Clark, Stephen Colt, and the pastry chef from Jean-Georges, and me and Flacco.
Yeah.
And I decided I'm going to do a vol au vent with foie gras for like 400 people.
Yeah.
It was a disaster because the foie gras had so basically I was taking the puff pastry and just pouring sauce over the top of it. And everybody, the who's who, like Al Roca was it was a comeuppance for me. This is the 90s. I was still struggling with like where I was going to go with my career. And then the next course was like Alex Strada. He was a Phoenician at that point. And then Patrick Clark, the legendary Patrick Clark's doing the squab dish. And then what are they making for dessert? Miniature chocolate fondant soufflés. This is 1991, 92. No one knew what it was, but this will show you food, and now they have it at Chili's on the menu because everybody realizes it's the easiest dessert to make if you're not a pastry chef.
Right.
Because all you have to do is just take melt chocolate with little cream, fold some egg whites in it, drop an egg yolk or two somewhere during that process. If you want to use flour for stability, but I never did, and it was just like, it's this beautiful, dense chocolate cake that you can put anything on.
So you were there at the beginning.
I was there in the inception.
So when you look back at this famous tweet, when you look back at that moment, how different was your trajectory after that? Because after that, I think you went on Top Chef, right? Or was it around the same time, shortly after that?
I had already been on Top Chef when I did the tweet.
You had?
Yes. I think the first time.
The first time.
But it was a prelude to the second time, but it had nothing to do with me being on the second time. So the first time, it became from the Most Hated article.
Right.
They were interested in a villain. They thought I was going to be a villain, and they portrayed me as a villain.
And for people that don't know, there was a D magazine. You made the cover of D magazine. It said the most hated chef in Dallas. You had like food on.
Yeah, I cooperated. It was a great. I didn't know what the title was going to be.
I still have it. Maybe I could get you to sign it. It was a great article in retrospect.
It taught me how to make lemons into lemonade. And it is true. Like no matter what unless you're doing something totally horrific or breaking the law, all press is pretty good for you because that's the culture we live in.
Yeah.
People want to be known. They want to be understood. I've kind of gone the opposite way lately.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to ask you about Michelin. For people that are listening, so I'm a lot of the audience that listens to Chef's PSA. This is their opportunity for coaching and mentoring for people that don't have access to coaches and mentors. So if someone said, "Hey, give me a high level advice. I want to get a Michelin star." What is going to be, your 3-minute spiel to help them get it?
My 3-minute spiel won't even be 3 minutes. It's to go to Europe or go to California, and not the French Laundry, because to emulate something that already exists is not going to work for you. But learning standards, and I say go to a 1-star Michelin. Go to a restaurant that's in the guide. I would be happy, and I don't think any of my restaurants, I'll be totally honest with you, because we're not tooled for this. I am going to restructure the one at the Highland, and we are going to shoot a year from now, 18 months from now, 24 months from now. Our goal is to get a Michelin star at Knife Italian in the Ritz-Carlton, which has a level of service, a level of ambiance, a level of elegance. And I know that Michelin will give out a lot of bib gourmands to barbecue and tacos, because it's a price point thing too. It's a service issue, like to move up to the guide and to the star, there are certain elements. I can't tell you what those elements are, even though I have had a Michelin star and I've worked in Michelin star restaurants. You'll see in movies that the guy goes to the bar, has a half bottle of wine, like all this other stuff. I don't know whether that's true or not.
Right.
And I had a Michelin star 2 years running, and we lost it last year because the team took it for granted, and we're on a destiny. We're on a mission to get it back, and the way we did it is to go back to basics. So if you understand the European system, if you see other Michelin starred restaurants, that just compare yourself to them, and that's what's going to happen. I haven't been to a non-Japanese Michelin starred restaurant in Texas. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I would think that, I don't know, in Florida, like I said, I can't predict what Michelin's going to do, and I don't know of a Michelin star experience that I've had here, and I don't mean any disrespect, because for me, you have to have carts, a beverage cart, you have to have a cheese cart, maybe a dessert cart, and I'm not talking about like one where you wheel over cheesecake and strawberry shortcake.
You're talking the old Gyrodon.
Yeah, and you have to have an amuse, and you have to have a sommelier, and you have to have a maitre d', and you have to have linen, and crystal. And this is what a Michelin star restaurant is worthy of, unless you are doing something so totally unique. But I haven't seen anything unique in Texas except barbecue, to be honest with you. So I expect a lot of bib gourmands, and maybe they'll give Aaron Franklin a star. But I don't think, I think that throws the whole system to scratch. It's like I was always saying that I love these guys. They're geniuses. They're talented, but it's a different type of chefing. Like James Beard should have a special category for heritage barbecue, because it's more about history, American history. James Beard, for years, all the French, European trained chefs, the Bradley Ogdens, all the guys we've mentioned, they were the ones winning Best Chef in America, right?
Yep.
Now, Chris Bianco, lifetime achievement, definitely. That guy deserves an award. I don't know what it means from James Beard anymore, but he deserves an award. I would give him a hug and all the awards that there are in the world. But what happens is that these things get diluted, and I don't know what they mean anymore, and then people waggle them in your face like they're somebody, and you don't want to be a dick and burst their bubble, but you're like, if I go to your restaurant and you blow me out of the chair, or you at least make me happy with the food, I'm going to say, that fucking guy deserves that thing. Give him another one.
When you look at your career and your body of work, is there a moment, I know we talk about ass and seats in busy restaurants, but is there like a moment when you said, that was the bucket list award that I was going after?
I used to be that way, and I stopped, I would say in the last, other than the Michelin star down in Florida when I heard that we could get it, of course, I want to get one here, but it's not happening today. I know that. I'm realistic. And then the retooling of the next restaurant, I'm going to prepare for that. But I'm preparing that restaurant to make the guide, not to get the star.
Yeah.
The star for me has to be in the Ritz-Carlton, in the hotel. You know, look at that's what all the great hotels in Europe, you know, the Ducasse, all these people, they're Michelin-starred restaurants, even if they're 1, 2, you know, because they have this level of service and hospitality that you're not going to get in your neighborhood restaurant.
And I agree with you. I think I want to ask you about the deals that you're in with these hotels, because I think one of the great things about having a restaurant inside of a hotel is you can spend a little bit of extra money. You're not so worried about, hey, if we don't sell out tonight, we're closing the doors next week. Mm-hmm. So from a coaching someone from an entrepreneurial side, when I think back to the deal that Dean got when he went into the Ritz-Carlton, I mean, in Texas, that was like the first of its kind. I'd never seen anyone at that point in time like, okay, Ritz-Carlton is going to put a Dean Fearing restaurant in there. And then slowly but surely, I think we had a Craft in Dallas that came in a little bit later. I can't remember what else happened. But now you have structured so many of these deals. If you were going to advise someone, say, hey, here's some things that you need to know that I wish I knew before I jumped into it. And if you want to win, this is how you're going to win.
Yeah. Well, my situation was accumulated over a period of time and a lot of observation and a lot of luck. I'll give you that right now. You make your own luck, but it's through hard work and perseverance. So when I made the transition from, when I left New York after 9/11, I went to Lake Tahoe and did a big corporate project. I worked with Clark Wolf, big restaurant consultant. We did a lot of golf courses, ski resorts, lakefront restaurant. I got a lot of politics, a lot of real estate experience, and just life experience of like how a chef would run a resort.
Right.
Because I'd always told myself, like, what am I doing in New York? Like, when they have planes crashing into buildings, how come I've never been the chef of a resort? I have friends that are in the Bahamas and mountains there. They ski, they swim. I'm in New York, like, riding my bike to work every day, right? So I get this job in Lake Tahoe, and then I get back to New York after 3 years. It's burning out there, snowboarding, smoking pot. You know, it's like California lifestyle. Rick Moonen hires me, and we get 3 stars in the New York Times in the New York restaurant, and Elizabeth Blau gives him a gig at Mandalay Bay. And I get tapped to be the chef de cuisine at Mandalay Bay. There's a lot of side stories we could talk about forever, politics, ego with Rick and I in the beginning, 2 chefs. But I realized when I had that opportunity with Rick that I didn't have to worry about the limelight or be the main guy anymore. I could focus on my cooking. And I was working behind a true celebrity chef who was on the marquee on Las Vegas Boulevard in a name restaurant. And we were getting invited to all these festivals. And I learned how to pack out. I learned how to cryovac things. I learned how to show up. I learned how to run the crew. And I was not distracted by the press or reviewers. It was a refreshing 3-year period. And I'm in Las Vegas meeting every chef in the world because it's a small community when you work out there. And this was during the prime.
Yeah.
And I watched, like, I helped Rick restructure his deal with, Mandalay Bay was sold to MGM Grand. Rick was under the table for like $2 million, and he had to surrender his lease to MGM Grand and then work a salary deal, a licensing deal. And I found out what these licensing deals were about and how the casino and the hotel, they partner with you. They take your name, your product, your energy, your menu, your persona, and they create this thing around you. It's a gift.
Yeah.
It's a true gift. So I learned that, and I was like, for me, that was like wanderlust. I was just looking up at these guys like, how do I become Tom Colecchio? I was on a show with him, but look, and this guy's on the fucking billboard now, and this guy's on a billboard. Like, how do I get there, right? So I just hung in there, worked for Rick. Then a headhunter came and said, Dean Fearing is moving on from the mansion on Turtle Creek. There's been an argument with Rosewood. Denny Alberts and Mrs. Hunt disagree. Denny's stealing Dean and taking him to the Ritz, because this was the time where Ritz in every city was doing a new Ritz, and they were taking the biggest chef in that city and trying to put them in their hotel,
Right.
like Tracy Desjardins in San Francisco, blah, 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 wherever that was.
Right.
Like, especially in a secondary market, it was to keep people on property. That's what we're here for. It's like our hotel restaurants are to make sure that it's not a hotel restaurant.
Right.
And then if you come to Dallas, you want to stay at the Highland Hotel because you're going to get that 240 dry aged steak that you've been reading around for all these years, or even a 120, or even taste 44 Farms for the first time and learn the difference. But the key was when guys like Tom and these other hotels that I was now working for were asking for $400,000. They were asking for astronomical amounts to license these restaurants. And I would go to the Rosewood guys and go like, I just got 5 stars. Why don't you put me in the, why don't we go over there and use my name, and I'll do it for free.
Right.
Just give me some more money, So I started hanging that shingle out there, and then I started going to every food festival in the country. I had made those bones with Rick, and then I was at the mansion. I had a platform, and I pressed on my relationship with Rick and the people I had met on the road. Like, the only reason I got invited to Pebble Beach Food and Wine is because I did Tomato Fest 2 years in a row. This is another thing kids don't expect or understand is like, my advice is to work, put your head down, and love to cook. I know that sounds like so like old man, get off my lawn shit, but it's not. Because the only way you're going to sustain, and I've been doing this for 45 years and I've never had another job, okay? And I'm doing pretty well these days. But for the majority of my life, I live paycheck to paycheck in fear of what's going to happen. And I'm still at 66 years old with 5 restaurants. One of them I own myself and 2 other deals on the table. I'm in the restaurant business. I lived through the pandemic. I've been broke. I've closed restaurants. That stuff can go away in 30 seconds, as you well know.
Yep.
No matter how famous you are or how good you are, a restaurant can tank in 2 minutes unless you take care of it like it's a part of you. And I don't want 30 restaurants. Even with the 5 I have now, I struggle because I give away a lot of control. But if you find good people and you communicate with them and you mentor them and you let them be free, you let them make their own mistakes, everything doesn't have to be about you, you create a team and you get a Michelin star. And you need a pastry chef. That's another thing, America. If you want a Michelin star, you better start hiring pastry chefs again. Yeah. Not making the dishwasher make the molten chocolate cake with a little, or thinking that bread pudding's going to get you a star. Because it's not, and you need Maynard D's and all this other stuff. Like I said, I don't have the list of criteria.
Creme brulee, creme brulee, pot of creme, and some ice cream from the.
Yeah, cheesecake from somewhere with Oreos on it, whatever. But you know what I mean? That does not a Michelin star restaurant make, and I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about your organizational structure, if that's all right. So now that you have all these restaurants, you have a little bit of an empire, but I mean, quite the empire compared to a lot of chefs, right?
For me, it's an empire.
It's an empire, right? So what does your brigade look like? How many people are on the team? I'm not talking about the people that work in the restaurants, but the people that help you run the empire.
Okay. It's not me, myself, and I, but it's pretty close. Yeah. Because this is the way I wanted to do it. And this is what I learned from what we were talking about in Vegas and all of these things, and having 22 restaurants. Because if you have 22 restaurants, guess what? You need an office. You need a director of operations. You need X, Y, and Z, and those people, and you got to cut up that pie. You got to start cutting that pie up with all those people, too. So you get this thirst. I got to have more restaurants. It's like, I got to have something here in this mall. I got to have it in that mall. That's not me. That is not me. I want a good life. I want to be able to maintain what I can do and have hands-on control. So I literally run the company. I have one lady that does invoices for me. I have 2 PR companies, one of them paid for by the hotel, one of them paid for by my organization. So that comes out of my take. And then I have an accountant and a lawyer. And George is kind of my director of operations / partner. I gave him the restaurant in Plano, which was given to me by Starwood. So George wants to stick with it in that restaurant. It's a knife restaurant. I'm affiliated with it. George is my partner there, but it's his restaurant. He's really, post-pandemic, he's really, the mall being in receivership, they're going to cut it in half and make it more like Legacy. He's had to survive a lot of stuff to go through there. So that's who I really rely on for numbers, and for political information. And what I mean by politics, like permits and, talking to the Board of Health and stuff like that. Yeah. And then the hotels kind of do all of that. They have to do that themselves. That's the greatest gift of all. Is like, if you can put a John Tesar restaurant in a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons or blah, 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 and I'm in a hotel, already I'm looking better because they have the servers, they have the uniform, they have the money, and they have the reputation, and they need to live up to their reputation. I'm an accent to that.
Right.
I'm just a partner. I'm like the salt on top of the steak for all of them. And if I can make money for them and keep people in the hotel and attract them and serve better than average food or great food, then I'm doing my job. And that's all it is. There's nothing glamorous about it.
So I left cooking 2 years ago, I left. I say I retired, but it's only because I don't ever want to be anyone's employee. Like I'm done being an employee.
There's nothing wrong with that.
If I would ever go back in, I have no desire to open up a restaurant just because I know what happens shortly after you open an independent restaurant, you close it. But a licensing deal would be something that eventually, if someone came at me and threw one of these licensing agreements at me, I would definitely consider it, especially because I only want to do like side quests now. So if someone said, hey, and we want to try and get a Michelin star, no guarantee that we get it. Might fucking spend all this money and I might come up with nothing, but I would consider it. Anyway, so I guess that's neither here nor there. That's a rant. But if someone was asking, hey, I'm going to maybe get a licensing deal, what are 3 things that I need to make sure I look at before I sign anything?
Okay, first, number one, before you think you're going to get a licensing deal, you either have to be a superstar on television or you have to be someone like Tyson Cole who created something that he basically owns.
Yeah.
Being the first, Anglo, Japanese educated, Japanese restaurant in one of America's major cities and doing it to a level and then taking it to Uchiko and all these other things. So that's something that nobody else or somebody else would have difficulty replicating. And he worked really hard on owning that. Now, I've been a chef my whole life. I've cooked seafood, and then all of a sudden I became this steak guy, right? Because I saw the difference in the flavor of 44 Farms. And I discovered this dry aging process, which people still don't really understand and they take for granted. But that's what makes Knife different. Is like when Ritz-Carlton's GM and 35-year employed French chef who's worked at Tour d'Argent, and now is in America, comes to eat my steak and he goes, there's a difference. So you have to be honest with yourself. Do you have something other than, hey, I'm on a show with X, Y, and Z, and I'm popular enough that people might want to come to my restaurant, but I'm not going to have anything to do with it. You can take that route, sure. But I think that's worse than an independent restaurant because you're never going to be there, you have no control, and you're kind of just dialing it in for a check. And that's going to come back to bite you in the ass one day. I don't care who you are. People don't pay a lot of attention, they have short attention spans, but for me, I don't go to restaurants like that because just because someone's name's on the sign doesn't mean you're going to get a good meal. My own restaurants included. I have to retool my stuff constantly with the employees and the changeover. So it's like once you have something special and unique, and you have to be honest with yourself. And trust me, the businessmen are going to be the guys that tell you that.
Yeah.
If you could go out and say, hey, I want a license. Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. It's just, I did it by conversation and hard work and a plan. When I went on reality TV, it wasn't to become famous. It wasn't to become a bad guy or to be a smart aleck or not even to show people how to cook. It was to get my relevance back as an older chef against a generation of charging younger chefs who are absorbed in television and sucking up the oxygen and everything that chefs do. While those of us who work in kitchens our whole lives are getting passed over because they're on television. So I felt like the only way I would survive is to jump into that arena, and that magazine article helped me, So even sometimes you have to go through uncomfortable moments. You're not going to win every time. You're not going to get a great review every time. But for me, that's the shit that motivated me. That's the stuff that said, hey, you know what? I needed that slap in the face. I need to go take a look at who I am and make myself a better person, a better chef, better businessman. And then people notice that. And then when you're putting out a unique product, when you're mature, even though you could be like me, outspoken, different than most people, very not business-like in the sense that I walk to the beat of my own drum, but I cook my ass off and I still cook today. And when I don't cook, I get depressed. I need to be on that line. I need to be involved. I need to be evolving. But at the same time, I'm not unrealistic about who I am as a chef, what I create, and what I'm capable of. And there's a ceiling to my capabilities. You know what I mean? I have a specific genre. I stay in it. I work it hard, and I'm authentic to it. And I think that resonates with the public. I don't need to be the next guy to create the thing that, fall, whatever it is. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Not the next chocolate piñata.
Exactly. The next edible balloon. Who knows? God, sorry, Grant.
All right, chef. So a lot of the people that listen, they're looking for advice. So if they're a young culinarian culinary school green about to join the industry, what are some things that you want to guide them right now that maybe you wish you knew back in the day?
The world is different than when I worked, because when I worked, you had to like show up every day. You had to work sick, and if you took a day off, someone would probably take your job. And again, that doesn't exist anymore. So from my point of reference, I always have that, but I've had to adapt and move on to the world, move forward with the way the world is and the way the hospitality business has developed. But I still think the best advice you could have is come humble, come with an open mind, ask questions. Be clean, be neat, be considerate, be respectful, and learn as much as you can, experiment as much as you can without screwing up the restaurant or your own reputation, but realistically, and stay based in the classics and follow chefs that you want to be like, But realize that it doesn't happen overnight. I've been doing this for 45 years. I don't know how many people have been doing it that long, and I think that's the one thing that I'm most proud of, is I've been doing this for 45 years, and I am now on the landing pad that I saw myself one day going to. Like, now I've had regrets and said, well, if I cleaned up my act, if I wasn't such a smart ass or whatever, I wasn't so immature at times, would I have been this 10 years ago? I don't care, because I'm still here. I'm 66. I'm not going anywhere. I'm cooking. I'm healthy. Look at me. I'm youthful. I got another good 20 in this biz, buddy.
Yeah.
So, and now the Michelin's here. Yeah, I have a little experience. I'm going to retool my restaurants. I'm going to try to get a Michelin star back in Florida.
Yeah.
And in 18 to 24 months, hopefully, we're going to give it a shot here in Texas. So, but those are just sidebar goals. My goal is to make a living, be a good father, become a better person, and be better at my job every day. That's all. And from the business structure point of view, you just got to put your head down and be in touch with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Look at your peers. Cook for people. Get their intake. Have people taste things. Don't come up with all these wild ideas all of a sudden because you think it's going to get you attention or you're good. Master the classics. I work in a restaurant, a steakhouse, where I think only 2 people know how to make béarnaise sauce. And to me, that's just like, are you shitting me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like, they're just replicating things from 1985, and I'm the one that's 66 doing the progressive cooking. Or it's so far out there that no one's going to relate to it. This is where I am just like, this is where I get the asshole reputation from, because I'm going to be like, no, yes, do it. There's no secret recipe. There's no secret trick. It's in here. It's here and here.
Yeah.
And then it's what you've learned, what you can taste. I'm very lucky that I'm born with a palate that allows me to taste things, I think, a little differently than most people. Because my best advice to anybody is, anything you cook, just make it taste good.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it looks like. If you ate it in the dark, would you want to go back for a second bite? Right? Because looking at it is one thing.
Right.
And that Instagram bullshit photo thing about food is so old already. Flowers on everything. It's like, go for it. If that's what you need, go for it.
Yeah.
I want my shit to look good too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially when you're at an event and everybody's they break out the bouquets and they're sprinkling dust and flowers and shit.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it's just a salmon in a bowl.
Yeah.
All that other stuff is just there for the visual effect. And the customers go, ooh and ah. Meanwhile, you could cook the most perfectly cooked piece of fish that was in the water 10 minutes ago. Sprinkle a little Moldon salt with some great olive oil that's personal to you, or wherever that fish came from, or with something relative to it. And it'll be better than any of those things that we just spent 20 minutes plating. For me, that's the advice, is that, like, Mother Nature is the chef. Like Marco says,
All right.
I am just the purveyor of Mother Nature's wonderful provides. And if I can be as simple and direct and respectful to that product, yet also interesting, then you're going to come and eat my food.
When I remember we went to Spoon, and I'll never forget, because it was me and Mike Hiller. We were sitting at the counter and you were cooking, and I'll never forget that. I was like, man, you were back. I don't remember how many cooks you had there, but I think maybe it was like 3 or 4. But you were back there stirring and cooking, and I was like, man, you still love it. You still love it.
I
you still cook like back then, a 21-year-old line cook with octopus arms.
And I'm going to do that. Everyone be warned. When I redo knife, steak, and seafood, I'm bringing spoon to knife in Dallas because Michelin's coming, because it's been 10 years, because I'm bored, just being an administrator or a mentor, and I want to cook my way out, at least for a few more years, and that's not to impress anybody, that's for me, but I'm going to do that whole seafood thing again, and it's just more than steak. I really want to focus on the steaks. We're going to renovate the restaurant. We're putting a new bar in, putting a floor in the restaurant, new lights. We have new logos. Everything's going to be new. And we're actually going to announce that I'm closing Knife after 11 years and then reopening as Knife, Steak, and Seafood. This will be January, mid-January. We have to wait through the holiday season for the renovation. It's done up. This is another thing. You ask me who I work for.
Yeah.
I work for hedge fund guys and hotel guys because they write the checks. So
yeah, there you go.
It's a partnership, but he with the big checkbook is the boss.
When I think back to Spoon back then, so I was like 2013-ish, right? It was probably the best restaurant in Dallas. Like I could say that now because back then I had a restaurant too that I was trying to make the best. But when I look back in retrospect, because I could say it now, it was the best restaurant in Dallas at the time. It was a shame because I remember I ate there and I was like, this is like a little Le Bernardin in Dallas at the time. It was great. It was the best meal I had.
It should still be there. It should still be there. It was just a business, bad business decisions, a bad group of partners that didn't understand the dynamics. And that's another thing. Is like, if you're going to get into business, know who you're getting into business with.
Yeah.
And go through that contract and get it written down.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to
Have an accountant and a lawyer, right?
Accountant and a lawyer, but lawyer first, accountant. Yeah. You can hold off on the accountant till you make money. You start your LLC or whatever you can do that online yourself for $249 if you know what you're doing. Yeah. As long as you pay your franchise tax, and now you have to also file for the criminal. I think the corporate criminal. There's an office now that just makes sure you're doing everything right.
Yeah. How do you recognize talent? So young cook in the kitchen. What do they do that you immediately say, okay, they got it?
Right. Like when you watch a basketball game or a track meet or baseball. There's guys you just see have moves or they have a stride. Mm-hmm. I see the way someone works. First, how they come dressed, right? How they set up their station. And then when the kitchen's operating, how they fit into that position.
Do you know, like, within minutes?
I can tell right away.
Yeah.
I'm a line cook. You know, I'm a chef, but I'm first and foremost a line cook. I worked my way through that. I've always been a cooking chef, so I relate more to line cooks than I do to bureaucrats or clipboard guys. I've always had a great executive sous chef, like Eric Brandt did all the paperwork and the scheduling. And there's always someone doing paperwork because I'm not doing it. So So that's just who I am. I'm a chef. I actually get joy out of putting something together that was cooked precisely that I know the customer is going to enjoy.
Last two questions, Chef. If you had a chef's PSA out there, so cooks stop doing this or start doing this right now?
Stop complaining, number one. No matter what's going on, stop complaining. And then start reading Escoffier and, it's real class. Dive deep into classic cuisine, no matter what it is, even if it's Greek or Italian or French, it doesn't have to be, but study the classics and study sauce making. Sauce making, everyone. It's a dying art. I'm telling you.
They're fermenters now.
I'm a saucier, and I think I'm still one of the few left other than in Danielle's organization or, at a very fancy restaurant. So if you want to make your bones as a young chef and really make an impact on a kitchen or your own restaurant, study sauces of all types.
Yeah.
And all international, not just French sauces, all types of sauces.
If you had a Mount Rushmore of four chefs in your time as a chef, if you had to put four chefs up on Mount Rushmore, who's there?
Oh, Andre Soltner, because for me he was like the man back then. John George, who I think is the most talented chef I've ever seen in my entire life. I'll throw Thomas Keller in there because he is very successful, super talented, hardworking, visionary, and then Danielle, just because he's the greatest. They're all equally talented. I think they have different talents, but they're all great restaurateurs. They're all extremely successful, and that's what you should try to emulate, but not be resentful that they have a lot more than you do, because they earned it. And
Yeah,
they made
they did.
business deals, and they worked. And, Danielle lost a star at Danielle. He was a 3-star, now he's a 2-star, but he goes on,
Yeah.
And he opened up another, you got to pick and choose what you want and just go for it. But really, I want to say one thing before I leave. If you want to be a TV chef, be a TV chef, right? But you can't be a TV chef full-time and then open a restaurant, because it doesn't work. And you can't tell me that it does work, under very unique situations. And those people know who I'm talking about. Stay on TV, great, make all the money in your world, but stop calling yourself a chef, you're an entertainer. And I'm not talking about Bobby or Guy even.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a younger generation that just wanted to be on TV, and they use chefing to get there. God bless it. But you know what? Where's your restaurant? Where's your chops every night? Where's your interaction with the guest? I don't care if you can judge a contest or, half that shit is bullshit anyway. That's why Bobby wins all the time.
Yeah. Chef, it was a true pleasure to see you. I think, legend, like I said earlier, you're someone that came to me when I needed it and cheered me up and pulled me out of a hole that I was in. And for that, I am forever grateful. It's good to see you. And I'm glad to see that you're still cooking on the line and opening restaurants and still shining, Chef. So thank you so
brother.
much. Thank you so much for being on the show. And where can people find you?
I appreciate it. You can find me, everywhere. But johntesar.com, and then Chef John Tesar on Instagram, Facebook. But, I'm around. You can come and talk to me. I don't bite, and I'm definitely not an asshole.
Good seeing you, brother.
You too, man.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to support everything that we're doing at Chef's PSA, go to chefspsa.com, where you get everything, the books, the merch. And if you want more, you can sign up for my Substack and get early access to all the podcasts that are coming up, as well as exclusive podcasts that are only available on Substack, and a lot more. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure you leave 5 stars, nothing less than 5 stars. Don't be a bad person. Bad people don't leave 5 stars. You're not a bad person. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Let me know what you think of this episode. Comment down below. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
Yo, it's André in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction, stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, class is in session.